Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. In this week's guitar lesson, we're going to take a look at adding a diminished chord and scale into your 12-bar blues. And the reason you do that is you get a little bit more of a sophisticated sounding lead or rhythm, a little bit more of a jazzy type feel, and it works really well over the 4 chord. So I'm going to show you how to do that. This is also a no accompaniment piece, so at the end of this you'll have something you can play on your own. You don't need another musician or a jam track or any of that. All you need is a guitar and a pick and you can play this. And it works on an acoustic or electric guitar. So I've got this video split into 2 parts, or this lesson I should say. In this first video we're going to take a look at the first half, which is a rhythm. If you'd like to watch the second half, which is really cool because I've added some fill licks into the rhythm, including a little diminished scale run, you can get all of that at ActiveMelody.com. Just look for EP170. That's the lesson number for this lesson. You'll be able to download the tablature and have access to the on-screen tab viewer, and you get that part 2 video. So it's EP170. Let's go ahead and get started with part 1. Alright, so this will be fun working in this diminished arpeggio, diminished scale, and diminished chord into our blues. It's just going to be a 12-bar blues. We're going to be in the key of A. And as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be doing this over the 4 chord. And some of you may not know what I mean when I say 4 chord. It's very easy. If you take the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and A would be, when you get to do, you're just repeating. That's 1 again. And we assign a number to each of those notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then when I say the 4 chord, that's in a 1, 4, 5 chord progression. You may have heard of that. Well, we just take those numbers out of that major scale. 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip 2 and 3. 4. There's your 1, 4. And there's your 5. So 1, 4, 5. So we have A, D, and E if we're playing in the key of A. Right? So that makes sense. So that's what I mean when I say a 4 chord. And the reason that you'd use a number instead of the letter, instead of just saying the D chord, is that will work over any key that you're playing in. So if you were in the key of G, you have your 1, 4, 5. You see what I'm saying? That way it's not key specific. So the 4 chord is where we're going to add that diminished chord. Now let's go to the intro. And so there's this little turnaround. You can use this as an intro. You can use it as a turnaround. And what I'm doing is a little walk down. And I want you to look at where this is in relation to the chord that we're in. So we're in the key of A, so what I do is I play an A chord. I play the A chord using the E chord shape. This is just an A major chord with a bar here. You can see the E chord within there. And if you look at this little walk down or turnaround, look at where that is. It lives within the bar. It starts within the bar. So it starts here on the 5th fret. My ring finger's on the second string, and my middle finger is on the 4th string, both in the 5th fret there. And what I'm doing with my right hand is I'm picking on the 4th string, and then I'm plucking with my ring finger on the 2nd string. Now you don't have to do that. You could pick both, but I find it easier to hybrid pick that. And we just take that little shape and walk it down, and walk it down, and walk it down again until we land on the 2nd fret. And the reason I mentioned the A chord is just look where that is in relation to your 1 chord or your starting chord, the root. That way you can use this in other keys. If you're playing a blues in B, you could go. See how it relates? Now another little thing that's kind of cool is when you walk that down and you're in this position, look at where you are. You're within another chord voicing using the A chord shape at this point. So you've just connected the 2 chords with this little walk down. So we're in A. And look at that. There's your A chord right there. So, alright, so there's the turnaround, the intro. And then I go to the E chord. Or, sorry, it's an E7 chord. And to make that, it's just an E chord in first position, but we're going to add our pinky here on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. Now, I'm not going to get into the specific strumming on this because I've got that in the tablature. But that's how that's played. Alright, so let me back up and put it together. So here's how it starts. And I slide into this first one. I go. So the strings, let me just call it out, it's 4, 2, 4. That's the pattern. 4, 2, 4, 4, 2, 4, triplet. These are triplets. 4, 2, 4, 4, 2, 4, 4, 2, 4, and then 4 and 2 at the same time. And then to the E7. And then we go right into the 1 chord, which you know what that is now, right? So it's the A chord in this case, because we're in the key of A, and we're going to play a little shuffle in A. Now what I'm doing is I'm playing palm muting for one. I'm using this part of the palm of my hand to rest on the strings to truncate the sound so it's not ringing out. We don't have that sound. Get this kind of nice bluesy sound. It sounds really good with overdrive on your amp if that's how you're playing this. But I'm playing strings 5 and 4. And now I've got a bar here with my, because I just naturally go ahead and make the A chord, so I'm barring the first 4 strings on the 2nd fret, but I'm only playing strings 5 and 4. So I'm going to play 5 and 4, and then just the 5, and then 5 and 4. But notice I've added my pinky here on the 4th fret, 4th string. Some of you may want to use your ring finger, whatever's easier, but push that down. Those 2, and then just the 5, and then back to the 5 and 4, and then the 5. So you can see that this happens every time, but this only happens every other time, if that makes sense. It's just a shuffle. Okay, so there's your A shuffle. And then we get to the 4 chord, and we go to the D chord. Now I'm going to play a D9, just to make it interesting. We're wanting to jazz this up a little bit, right? This will give you some new ideas. So when we play the D9 chord, the way that I think of it, a very easy way to make the chord is I think of a D7 chord down in 1st position, which I know most of you know. And then I'm making that same chord here, so that my middle finger and my ring finger are on the 5th fret, strings 5 and 3. And then I've got my index finger on the 4th fret, 4th string. My pinky comes up here to the 5th fret, 2nd string. That's a D9 chord, which is really nice, jazzy sounding chord. So once you make that chord, by the way, you'll use this chord. If this is a new chord to you, you'll use it all the time, because you can slide it. It's just a great chord to use, you know, for blues. So the strum pattern for this goes like this. You can see I'm still palm muting, and I'm still using really the same technique that I did for the A, where I've got the chord and then just the 5th string, chord, 5th string. It gives you this nice little rhythmic thing. Now, if I were playing this with a band, I don't know that I'm not sure if I would always add that 5th string. I may go, you know, like that, which would be okay. But since I'm doing this on my own with no accompaniment, it gives me a little bit of extra background, I guess, context. Okay, now this is where I add in the diminished chord. So we're playing the 4 chord, so it's kind of standard blues up to this point. But now, so let me show you how to make that chord. So I know you know how to make a D down in 1st position, at least I hope you do. So we're going to take that same chord shape and we're going to apply it here, so that my middle finger and my index finger are on the 4th fret, strings 2 and 4. And then so it looks like that. And then my ring finger goes down to the 5th fret, string 3. So you have, and then I'm going to take my pinky and put it down on the 5th fret, string 1. So that's a D sharp diminished 7 chord. So you can see where it is. It all falls into the same little area. It's actually pretty easy to jump back and forth between these 2 chords. Now, it may, since this is a new chord, maybe for some of you, it may take a little more work to transition into it. But just find that D chord shape. That's just so natural to do for me. And then put your pinky down. Now, I said it's a D sharp diminished 7 chord. So a D sharp, why a D sharp? Well, if we just play the single notes, for example, so let's do the A, and then we do the D. Did you hear how I went from the D to a D sharp? It just naturally, it kind of works. You can already tell that that's going somewhere. It's a transition to get you well, your ear wants you to go back to that 1 chord because you know the 1-4-5 progression. It's like ingrained in us now. So the point is, anytime you're playing a 4 chord, you can always just go up 1 half step or 1 semitone, or just sharp that, whatever that note is, and play the diminished 7 chord of that, and it'll work. And it'll work into your blues. So if you're playing a D chord and you want to go up a half step, play a D sharp diminished 7 chord, there's different ways you can voice it. I could have played it like this. I'm not going to show you that voicing in this video, but that's another way to do it. I always use this one just because it's so easy for me to go to. But that's how that works. So you got your 4 chord, your diminished 7 chord, or sharp diminished 7 chord, and then back to the 1. And now that works with chords, and we're going to see in the next video it also works with arpeggios and scales. So that's really nice if you're playing a lead and you want to work in. And that's all I did. I was just playing the A major pentatonic scale, and then I worked in the D sharp diminished arpeggio, which is a nice little twist. And it only happens in one spot, but when you're playing lead and you just want to work in some of that stuff to make you sound a little more jazzy, maybe. You wouldn't hear Robert Johnson do that, I guess, or Muddy Waters, but certain players will, and I think it's kind of cool. It's a cool thing to know. So just remember, up a half step, and that works for chords, arpeggios, scales, it doesn't matter, from the 4 chord. Now that I showed you how to make this chord, here's another little side note, which is kind of cool. Some of you may know this already, but you can take this chord and you can slide it up 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, and then you can slide it up 3 frets again, and you can keep going. It's the same chord, which is cool. It goes this way too, and you're going to see that in a minute as we walk down to it. But that's a kind of a cool, it's a very unique thing on the guitar where you can keep the same exact fingering, and just by moving the same amount of frets, we're basically playing different voicings of that chord. They're kind of inverting each time, and there's some theory behind that. I don't want to get into that in this lesson, but just trust me on that, it works. So and that's another reason I wanted to show you that shape. Actually, that works for all the diminished shapes though. So if I had used this one, same principle applies. You can slide it up and play it in different positions. So, all right, let's back up now, all the way back to the beginning. Let's play the intro and play up to where we are. So we have. And one other thing, I'm playing the same rhythm pattern when I'm playing this diminished chord. I'm playing the strum or the whole chord, but then I'm playing the 4th string, and I'm just keeping that going just to keep some kind of context. Now we go back to the 1 chord. Okay, and then I threw in this kind of real jazzy thing. Now I got that from, I think I got that from Chuck Berry from Wee Wee Hours, maybe. I think that's where I heard that. Really cool chord. And what the chord is we're sliding, it's actually an A6 chord. That's an A6, and then we slide down to a G6, which is kind of weird, but it works. Now, your takeaway though, a lot of people get caught up and wait, why? Let me get out my calculator and figure out why G6. It doesn't. Just know this: if you're playing an A, we're on the 1 chord, right? You can look at where this A6 lies within that chord. Here's my root fret, and I'm going to show you how to voice this. And just know that you can always go down 2 frets, and it's going to work. So you've got this little slidable area. You can go back and forth. You can start on the G6 and slide up. You can start here and slide it down. It doesn't matter, but you've got this thing to work with. And it works. Like if you're in C, for example, same thing. Isn't that cool? Just remember that. Now, here's another thing, and I think this may be how Chuck Berry did it in Wee Wee Hours. I can't remember, but So if that's your one chord, you could apply that. The next chord is a D. And then all the way up to the 5 chord. Down to the 4 chord. That's another nice little rhythm thing that you can add to your bag of tricks. Okay, let me show you how to make this. Now, I've got my another D7 chord shape. These are very common. So here's your D7 chord down in first position. We're making that same chord shape here, but I've got my ring finger and my pinky on the 7th fret. Pinky's on string 2, ring finger's on string 4. I've got my middle finger on the 6th fret, string 3. There's your D7 chord shape. And then I've got my index finger on the 5th fret, 1st string. That's an A6 chord. Remember where that is in relation to your A major chord. Always tie this stuff back to something. So I always tie everything back to this A or to this E chord shape when we think of caged, the major bar chord shape. So I can easily see how that lives within there and how that references. The main thing for me is I've got the bar here on the 5th fret, so I know that my index finger starts there, or the start of that chord happens here. Okay, and now that's the chord shape, and I just slid it on it. So I started it down 2 frets below, and the way that I strummed it, I went strum, 5th string, and then slid it up and then down. Now I've got the specifics in the tablature, and I don't want to get into that here, but that's how it's played. That's the chord. So if we could go back to the 4 chord in this. There's your diminished 7, and then we go back to the A, and here it is. Now we go to the 5 chord. Now I played the open 6th string because that's the 5 chord in this case is an E chord. So the open 6th string is an E, and then I already showed you how to make that D9. Well, it's the same thing, but we're just going to slide it up 2 frets. Now it's an E9. Now I happen to collapse my pinky on this one and hit strings 2, 1, and 2, so I'm hitting that note in there as well. You don't have to do that, but I noticed when I watched what I played, that's how I did it. So the strumming pattern for this is the same thing where we've got the chord and then the note. In this case, our note's going to be the 6th string, or the open E string, so it's... Okay, and now, normally you would just go to the 4 chord, but remember we can substitute in that 4 chord spot the sharp diminished 7 version of that, right? So instead of just going down to the D7, which I could have done, it would have been standard, I went to the D sharp diminished 7, but I played it here. Now remember I showed you that chord shape is slidable? This is where it comes in handy because I was in this position, so it was easy for me to just go and play the D sharp diminished 7 chord here, and then what's nice about it is you can slide it down, and that's what I did. I played 2 here and 2 here. So let me show you from the E. Right? And then back to the A. Back to the 1. And then really what I did at that point, I did the walk or the turnaround, little walk down part, and then back to the E7 chord, and then I go into part 2. And part 2 is where we go into some lead licks, some fill licks along with those chords, just to kind of take it up to the next level. So there's quite a bit of material in this, even though it seems like a kind of a basic like chord thing. I hope you've had some takeaways. If you get takeaways, that's what these lessons are all about, and because you can start to apply this to your own playing. So when you're improvising, when you're writing, or you're just sitting around the house or whatever, you've got all these new things you can start to use in your playing. So let me back up now and go through this one more time. I'll go through it slowly so you have the whole thing, and then I'll see you in the part 2 video. So here we go.